Hey guys, welcome back to Rusty Autoholic Garage. So, I thought I would do something that I was going to call Your Questions, My Answers, which is basically just a Q&A, but it was the best I could come up with. But anyway, the reason I'm doing this is I've gotten quite a few questions about this swap. Some of them more technical that were going to be difficult to answer in line in a YouTube comment. And some of them are just repeated constantly. And while I've hinted at some of the answers and made some of the decisions that I did or did not make on this swap, I never really went in depth on why I went with a decision or without a decision. So I figured on this kind of Q&A episode, now that I kind of have all my technical issues resolved, I'd go over all the decisions I've been making. So here we go. Question 1. Oh, okay. This is the #1 question I have been getting asked since I started the swap. And it's always, hey Grant, that Kubota V2403 only has 60 to 65 horsepower. Is that going to be enough to power the TJ Wrangler? And truthfully, in completely stock form, if I didn't mess with the turbo and I didn't mess with the mechanical fuel injection, yeah, I think it would be. It wouldn't be the fastest thing in the world at 65 horsepower, but you have to realize when you go to a diesel, horsepower is somewhat important, but what you really are wanting is torque. And on this V2403 with the stock turbo, which is a TD03 with like 5 to 6 PSI of boost, you're looking at like 180-ish foot-pounds of torque at idle, all the way through redline, which on this motor is about 3,000 RPM. Now you can change the limiting governor on it, and you can go a little bit higher, but for the way I'm setting up the automatic and the way my gearing is and the axles, I don't need to be worried about it. So, truthfully, could you run it just stock setup? Yeah. It wouldn't be the fastest thing in the world, but without a doubt, you could go down the highway, low speed trails with 180 foot-pounds of torque. Yeah, you'd be great. Because on the stock 4.0 engine, you don't hit peak torque till like 3,200 RPM. Imagine having peak torque, at idle. And especially if you had a 5-speed manual, you could easily pull it off, without a doubt. Automatic is going to be a little more difficult, but here's the thing. I'm not keeping this stock. Now, there are 2 ways you could actually go with this. Now, here is the factory turbo. Now, this is a TD03, but it has a wastegate, so this prevents it from getting over 5-6 PSI of boost. I found out you could remove the wastegate or get a different wastegate, however you want to do it, and this turbo will actually put out closer to 14-15 PSI of boost. Now, you figure that, and this engine would be probably closer to, I don't know, 80, 85 horsepower and well over 200 foot-pounds of torque. And that would be fine. That would make this whole swap work just great. However, I'm not keeping this stock turbo. I am going with this. This is a Borg-Warner KO3. This is actually normally used on the early mechanical injection TDIs from Volkswagens. And once I remove the wastegate and everything, we're actually going to prevent the wastegate from ever opening up. This turbo will produce about 24 to 28 PSI of boost. And at that amount of boost, one, I am absolutely going to have an air-to-air intercooler, which is going to be in the front grille. But with that amount of boost, and that boost is going to come on full between like 1,600 RPM and 1,800 RPM, I'm going to have about 120-ish horsepower. But I'm going to have well north of 300 foot-pounds of torque. So with those 2 figures, and again, that's 300 foot-pounds of torque between 1,600 and 1,800 RPM, and that's through redline. And because of the way I've set up my gearing and what my cruising RPMs will be, and I'll put in a graph right here. I've actually done a lot of calculations on that, so, just put it there right now. It makes it so whenever I'm cruising, especially at highway speeds between 55 and 65 miles per hour, I'm gonna have 300 foot-pounds of torque. So will this be able to go down the interstate and highway? Yeah. Will this be able to go down the trails? Sure thing, it's gonna be fantastic, especially leaving it with stock tires. I've made the decision not to go with a crazy lift, at least for now, mostly just because of the right-hand drive. But to answer the number one question I get, will the V2403 have enough horsepower and torque to power my TJ Wrangler? Absolutely not a problem. Next question! Okay, the next question I have is from Bart Purcell, and I'm gonna go ahead and say, if I just screwed up your username, I completely apologize. I am horrible with names. But anyway, what he said was he has an 02 TJ Wrangler, and would it work with his 3-speed automatic? Also, he asked, where did I find the V2403? So I'm gonna go ahead and answer this in two parts. The first thing I'm gonna say is the V2403 is the most difficult 03 series engine to find. I actually found it on Facebook Marketplace of all things. And it was in Michigan or Wisconsin, I don't remember where, and I had it shipped from there to Virginia. Fastnell actually did the shipping, and it was, you know, for a 400 plus pound engine going that many miles, it was a very good price. The engine with shipping was right at $1,500, almost evenly. Shipping was right at 200 bucks. But if you're wanting to get into the swap, now, the other thing I'll say, this is the indirect injection version of the motor. The most common engine you will find in the Kubota 03 series of engines is the V2203, the 2.2 liter. And if you get the 2203 that is direct injection, not indirect injection, it has about the same horsepower and torque as the 2403. Maybe a little bit more. So you can find the 2203s pretty commonly. They're on eBay a lot between, depending on who's selling them and the condition and the time of year and all that jazz, you can get them under $2,000 easily. I mean, running 1,500, but like the engine I was initially going to use was a V1903, so 1.9 liter. I found that in Craigslist in my area. It was about 40 minutes from my house, and I bought that engine running, and I want to say it was $700. And it's actually in that corner over there, and that's going in the next project I'm going to do on this channel. And that's also indirect. That's my lowest horsepower engine, and that's actually the whole reason why it's not going in here. Originally, that engine was going to go in here. This was going to be run by a V1903. I stumbled upon the V2403 and KubotaSwappers, who I was trying to figure out turbo setups and all this jazz, straight up said, if you can afford the V2403, get it and put the V1903 in your CJ2A. So that's what I'm doing. So to answer that question, eBay, Facebook, heck, Google searches. I believe there's a website that actually sells them used because they were out of carriers in California. So I mean, the V2203 is by far the most common and easiest one to find, and there's really not a huge horsepower difference. I just got really lucky by finding mine. Now, to answer the second half of this question, will this work in a 3-speed Wrangler? Yes, it will work. It's not going to be a problem. You can buy the 4.0 adapter from KubotaSwappers, and it will bolt to your 3-speed automatic, which I'm assuming is a 32 RH. Now, if you have a 4-cylinder, it's a 30 RH, but it's the same bolt pattern as far as I know. But you're going to run into a problem with gearing. To answer your question, let me put a graph right here. Worst snap in the world. But anyway, the biggest problem you're going to run into is it only being 3 speeds, and I'm assuming everything's stock right now. So if you're going to do this swap, you really want to consider doing an AW4 automatic. That overdrive is going to help you immensely in this swap, only because of the RPM limit. I mean, these engines really only spin 3,000 RPM. Now, they'll run 3,000 RPM all day long if you want to, but diesels are low-speed engines. So if you can, you know, do the AW4, get the overdrive. It's going to help you out immensely. So, will it work? Yeah, gearing is just going to be your biggest issue, but other than that, you should be fine, especially because the 32RH is completely mechanical. There's no computer on it, no nothing. You would be absolutely fantastic. Next question. Okay, the next question comes from Brigham Alcorn, and this is actually one of my favorite questions I've gotten. Out of curiosity, did you search out the right-hand drive or just happen into it? If you did search it out, why? Sorry about that. So, that's a little bit of a complicated answer, and I'm going to explain why. So, I first got into Jeeps because of postal Jeeps, and where I grew up, the post office my parents always went to was one of the bigger ones in town. So when you would go in and park, there was this huge fenced-in area in the late 80s and early 90s. And you could see all the DJ5s and the brand new at the time LLVs. But they were still using DJ5s, and you could see them being worked on, the post office loading them, DJ5s leaving the lot, and DJ5s coming back. And, you know, the first thing my parents remember me saying was, when I wanted to be adult, I wanted to be a mailman. I wanted to drive a right-hand drive Jeep. To me, that was the coolest thing ever. And before I got this right-hand drive Wrangler, in early 2017, I actually bought two Jeep DJ5s. It was a 1983 and a 1984 model. I'll put a picture right here. And they weren't running at all. They were projects. I bought them as a pair. One had a title, one didn't. I mean, and I didn't have the space to really get it working at the time, because to get those working, you really had to take them completely apart and put together the best parts out of everything. And those were oddball Jeeps, mostly because they weren't for public use. They were literally slammed together with whatever you could find. So it would have, like, one of them had a Chevy Nova 4-cylinder engine. The other one had the Iron Duke 4-cylinder. Both of them had Chrysler 3-speed automatics. However, even though it was a Chevy engine in both, they had a Ford distributor and an ignition. I mean, it was literally whatever part, you know, Jeep could find, that's what went on it. And that's what AMC did back then. You know, they just went with whatever parts they could get the cheapest, and they made them work. So I never got those running. I had those about 6 months. And I mean, I remember the day very well. I was on Craigslist, and I'd been wanting a TJ Wrangler forever. Haven't owned a YJ, but I've always wanted a TJ. And I'd been trying to buy a TJ for like 2 or 3 years. And every time the morning of I'd go to get it, I'd message the guy and be like, hey, I'm on my way. And inevitably he'd be like, oh yeah, sorry man, sold it last night. You know, even though I called the guy, said I could be there tomorrow morning, because it was always that, like, I would make the deal with the guy at like 5 o'clock in the afternoon, right as the bank closed. Because I'm not going to carry that much cash on me all the time. But anyway, I was surfing Craigslist, and this popped up. Now, I want to go ahead and say, it was like the smallest, simplest Craigslist ad you have ever seen. I mean, there was nothing to it. And it was like 2 pictures, a quick little 1-line description. But it fit kind of my categories. And I had 3 categories I really wanted out of a TJ. And what they were was, I wanted one as close to stock as possible, because I wanted it to be my canvas. I didn't want to get someone else's Jeep and continue what they started. I really wanted a stock Jeep to make my own. So that was one of the criteria I absolutely had to have. But the other 2 was right-hand drive, or I wanted it to be the color orange, or the early TJs had a light blue, which I'll put up a picture of my first Jeep, which was a Jeep Cherokee, and it was the same color blue. So it was either going to be stock and the color I wanted, or the color I wanted right-hand drive, or whatever. And at this time, I want to say I had never seen an orange right-hand drive Jeep. So anyway, this popped up, and in the ad, this thing looked red. And I really didn't want a red Jeep. I'm not a huge fan of red. It's just not my thing, mostly because of the whole stigma with police. But it fit every other criteria. One owner, all stock, and everything worked. AC, everything worked. And it was a 2006. It was the last year of the TJs. So it had a 4-speed automatic. So I called the lady up. We made a deal. I told her I could be there in an hour. She said, yeah, come look at the Jeep. Let me know when you get there. I'm at work. The Jeep's unlocked. I'll bring you the keys. So I went to the bank, got the money, drove out there. This was 20 minutes from my house. Like, that was the other crazy part. It wasn't that far away. And I remember driving up to it and calling my wife and going, I haven't even drove in it yet. I haven't even really looked at it yet. I'm buying it because it was orange, which is my favorite color. So I had a one-owner, right-hand drive, stock Jeep TJ Wrangler. Took it out for a test drive, and let me tell you, if you've never driven a right-hand drive before, it is the weirdest thing in the world. And there were some issues with it. I mean, she was on a rural route, and she had retired from doing it. But I remember getting back, and I looked at her, I was like, is there any wiggle room? And unbeknownst to me, I thought the ad had been up for 23 days when I messaged her. It had been up for 23 minutes. So all she had to do was turn her phone to me, and I could see all the text messages. Let me know, I can be there right now. Like, one guy was like, I can be there with more cash, blah, blah, blah. And I looked at her and I said, here. And we went to the bank because she was in North Carolina. We had to get the title notarized. And I mean, she basically sold this Jeep in 23 minutes on Craigslist. And I've never regretted it. So, was I looking for a right-hand drive TJ? Kind of. But in a way, I happened upon exactly what I wanted. I happened upon an orange TJ that was right-hand drive, and it was completely stock. And to me, that's... I would have never found that anywhere else. Because again, the most common right-hand drives I've ever seen are white, green, black, and I've seen quite a few yellows of all things, but white and black are the two big ones. So, you know, I thought if it was going to be right-hand drive, it was going to be one of those two. So yeah, the answer to your question, kind of. Hey guys, so I think that's all I'm going to do this evening for the Q&A. Again, thank you so much for your comments and questions. I've really enjoyed them. Going forward, I haven't been able to do the long working nights like I used to early on in these videos. So what I'm going to start doing going forward, I keep feeling like I have to sneeze, by the way. That's why I keep doing this. It's like, I've been trying to sneeze for an hour now and it's just not coming. Anyway, back on topic. I haven't been able to do the long videos like I used to. So what I'm gonna start doing is working on this after work about 60 to 90 minutes every night. I tried it out in the previous video, just taking off the exhaust, turbo, and intake, and it worked really well. You know, I got a lot done in a short amount of time. So that's what I'm gonna start doing. So expect a lot more videos posted each week, but they're gonna be much shorter in nature. So probably under 10 minutes, but you're gonna get one every couple of days. So anyway, leave a comment down below with what you think. If you liked the video, consider giving it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed already, please consider subscribing. And if you have subscribed, thank you so much. I'll see you in the next video.